I think I just pushed it. We're
Cool.
good.
Oh. And just, can you guys give me a thumbs up or a yes if you see the correct person? Perfect. All right. So I'm Katie Bruce. I'm the Director of Application Services and Student Programs at the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy. And here today to talk to you guys about navigating the pharmacy school admissions process. And as we said before, small group, so just feel free to stop me along the way with any questions. Trying to cover a lot of common questions we get that we get from students in this presentation. So hopefully it'll cover most everything, but we will find out. So first and foremost for today, we're going to be reviewing some of the pre-pharmacy steps on your path to becoming a pharmacist. So showing you some of the places to explore the pharmacy profession. That's going to include reviewing school profiles and program pathways to learn the best fit for you. Walk through some of the preparation to be an applicant. So things like visiting school websites, completing the prerequisites for schools you're interested in applying to. And then thirdly, actually applying. So the three big parts of this step include providing all your transcripts, identifying evaluators, and then preparing for and conducting interviews. So first and foremost, what is PharmCAS?
Hey, Katie,
hopefully
sorry.
you guys.
We see we see the presentation in PowerPoint and not just your slides.
All right, let me stop the share. That's odd. That's not what I see on my screen. I'm going to unshare and reshare.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to stop the PowerPoint because it is. All right, let's try this one more time.
There we go.
Okay, so that was the first one that I was talking through, and now to the what is PharmCAS. Sorry about that.
You're fine. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so hopefully you guys are familiar with PharmCAS or have heard of the name, but PharmCAS, or the Pharmacy College Application Service, is the centralized application service used to apply to multiple Doctor of Pharmacy or PharmD programs offered by all of our colleges and schools of pharmacy. So it's designed for first-year professional PharmD degree programs, and it provides access to individual pharmacy degree program admission requirements in what we hope is an easy to find and standardized format. And the majority of our pharmacy schools do use PharmCAS, currently 135 out of 143. So most likely if applying to pharmacy school, you will be using this service. So to start here, let's take a brief look at the pathway to becoming a pharmacist to see where PharmCAS fits on this journey. I'm not going to go into this whole slide in a lot of detail. I'm going to stick with where we start and where we get to PharmCAS, and then I can certainly provide these slides if you want to look at this in more detail later to see what comes after. So as you can see on the left, the Doctor of Pharmacy program requires 2 to 4 years of specific undergraduate college study. And then once this pre-pharmacy study is complete, applicants would then apply through PharmCAS to be accepted to a college or school of pharmacy. And most students who enter a pharmacy degree program have only completed three or more years of college, not necessarily even a bachelor's degree. You can, but it's not required. So I'm hoping you guys have gone to the PharmCAS website before, but if not, just going to highlight a few things here. So in July of 2020, we launched a new PharmCAS website that we hope visitors are finding much more user-friendly. It's mobile friendly, and a cool feature is that all the photos throughout the website are real student pharmacists and real faculty from our colleges and schools of pharmacy. So no stock photos throughout. So hopefully that gives you a better visual. And I want to spend a few minutes just to show you some helpful resources on the website that might be worth looking at as you guys are exploring your pharmacy pathways. So first is the helpful resources section. And this is just a great place for a lot of exploring and preparation. You're going to find helpful tools, tips, and tutorials. For instance, we have a brand new PharmCAS infographic, and within the infographic, it's a snapshot of a lot of applicant data from the last application cycle. So it might help you to see where you fit as far as applicants for a future application cycle. Also, you can link directly to the Pharmacy is Right for Me website to learn more about the profession of pharmacy And that includes a deeper look at a multitude of career pathways. We have a pharmacy blog on there that consistently features unique content directly from current students and current pharmacists. So it might be something to look into to learn more about specific and unique pathways that are available for pharmacists. And then next, and one of the big things we'll probably touch on a little more here is the school directory. So I'm going to expand on that a little more in the next couple slides. So we definitely encourage you to visit this. It's going to have all the admission requirements for every school before you apply. The directory provides advanced filtering capabilities. You can see some of them on the screen. So you can search by the region of the country, the specific state, what the PCAT requirement is, deadline options, all of that. And then here is kind of not being in the site. This is below the fold. So where you'd see after those check boxes on the left under compare, you can compare schools side by side. And then if you click on any school, this is just an example. It brings you here and you're going to have a ton of criteria and basically a snapshot of all the requirements to apply or that pharmacy school entails, including contact information to get in touch with them. One other thing in this section is the Comparepharmd programs dynamic reports. So each of these buttons goes through a report to compare programs based on individual interest and current directory data. So users, if you go there, you can export the results into an Excel format for your own use to find any of this that might be helpful for you. And there's one additional item on this page that's a PDF versus a dynamic report, and that's the course prerequisite summary. And this is just a closer look at the final page of that PDF, but it summarizes the number of programs with a certain course prerequisite, among other things. So it just might be helpful for you to know as you're exploring a career pathway in pharmacy that pretty much everyone's gonna require things like chemistry, biology, and then you'll see some unique ones in there as well. So just knowing where you're applying, it might be helpful to look at these in advance. And just to break it down a little bit further, these are the most common prerequisites across schools. And a key thing to remember is that the courses are going to, again, vary across the PharmD programs. Again, the ones highlighted there, most common. But if you have questions about a particular course that you've taken, we just recommend contacting the school directly because on occasion it might fit into one of their requirements. So always good to just check. So back to the website for a moment. The PharmCAS instruction section, also very helpful. We house a lot of key information there to guide you along the way, but we also include everything into one place, which is the application instructions PDF. Really big document, but control find is awesome within it and just helps you get to where you might need to go. So it just makes it's simple if you want to just save it to your desktop or print a copy, and just makes it easy to find anything you might need as you're navigating the application process. Now briefly on the applicant conduct section, we just encourage all applicants to familiarize yourself with our applicant responsibilities, just remembering that you're responsible for properly completing your application, sending all your supporting documentation and fees to PharmCAS on time, and regularly checking the status of your file by logging into the application. So also, we encourage you to read the code of conduct. Pretty self-explanatory, but just want to throw that out there. It's always helpful to do. And I'm going to expand a little bit on the cooperative admission guidelines just because a lot of our schools do use those. They're basically, the cooperative admission guidelines, I might refer to it as CAG here. They're traffic rules for pharmacy. Some, but not all of our schools use them, and you can determine which ones do on the PharmCAS school directory that we previously visited. But if you're applying to a CAG school, you should only hold a single acceptance after March 1st. And then if you have 2 or more acceptances, we just recommend contacting the CAG school by March 1 to respond to the offers or request more time. Generally, they're totally fine working with you, but just a good practice so you're not receiving a lot of emails from them. And you can still apply and be accepted to additional schools after March 1, regardless of your acceptance status. Best practice here is just to keep communicating with the schools. So now let's get in a little bit more to the application. So our application cycle opens in mid-July each year. So for the upcoming 22-23 cycle, we'll be launching on July 14th. If this is your first time applying through PharmCAS, you're going to click that Create an Account button. and then follow the prompts to set up your username and password and everything else. If you have applied previously or even just created an account in a previous cycle, you can sign in using your previous credentials. And the PharmCAS system is going to allow you to apply as a reapplicant or start a fresh application in that manner. Your PharmCAS ID is going to remain the same regardless of if you create a new account or start as a reapplicant if you had previously applied. So a common question we get here, if you had at least started an application in the previous cycle, regardless of applying or not, is what is pulled over if you do choose that reapplicant feature. So as a reapplicant, you can pull over all your personal information and then information such as coursework, official test scores, and attached transcripts. And PharmCAS does not allow applicants to edit courses or colleges attended that were previously verified by PharmCAS or carry forward letters of recommendation, payments, personal statements, or information within the program materials section, which is school specific. And this is just because most pharmacy schools would like to see what has changed since you last applied. So again, in order to use a reapplicant account, you do not have to have submitted in the previous cycle. You just needed to create an account and just started entering eligible information. We're seeing that more and more students are doing that just to get a feel for the application. So pretty much now, Taylor, Caden, if you wanted to log into PharmCAS and just see what's there and look around, you can do that. And if you start filling in any of this information, again, later you'd have the option to pull it forward or start from scratch. So after we get through the create account part, this is the first page you're going to get to. You are forced to select at least one program before filling out any parts of the application. And you're not locked in. You can always change that. So what we recommend is if you pick one and you later decide you're no longer applying to that particular school, to come back and deselect it. And that's just so the school knows you're no longer interested, because when you do check off a program here, they see that you're what's called in progress. Basically, it's like you put them in the Amazon shopping cart, so to speak. So as far as application fees, if you apply to one program, it's $175, and then each additional program is $55 after that. So on this page, also, it's obviously we have a lot of programs in here, so you can use the filter button to search for a specific school, search by state, search by accreditation status, just any of those things that might make it easier rather than having to scroll through each page individually. And then also one of the first things to do if you are eligible or in need of this is the PharmCAS fee waiver. We do offer them on a first come, first served basis for financially disadvantaged applicants. To apply for one, you would upload a federal income tax return with your name on it. That's the key. And it can either be your tax form or your parents if you were claimed as a dependent and has an adjusted gross income that falls below the low income level provided. And that information is all on the PharmCAS website. One key thing to remember here is that some applicants will upload a document with their parents' name and their name is nowhere to be listed. If that's the case, PharmCAS will reopen your fee waiver request and ask for your tax return. So if you're in need of one, we just recommend making sure you know that first, just to not slow down your process. If you receive one or are looking to receive one, you must apply for and be approved for a waiver before you submit your PharmCAS application. A fee waiver cannot be granted retroactively after you apply. And then if approved, the fee waiver is going to cover that base fee of $175. So now let's look at the application. As you can see, it's divided into 4 quadrants. The first 3 are standardized questions for all PharmCAS programs. And the 4th quadrant, the program materials one there, is customizable by each participating PharmCAS school. So each quadrant has a fuel indicator, so to speak, that circle there. And that's going to tell you how much of each section you've completed. And you must complete all required sections of each quadrant before you are able to submit. So I'm not going to go through each quadrant section by section. A lot of it is very self-explanatory, but I do just want to focus on some helpful tips and cover some of the most commonly asked questions we receive. So with that, let's start with the academic history section. So in this is colleges attended. It's strongly recommended to complete this section first. You want to report all institutions you previously attended, regardless of their relevance to the programs you're applying to. So that's going to include everything: courses taken in high school for college or university credit, summer courses, community college courses, military academies, post-baccalaureate, graduate or doctoral work, study abroad, foreign coursework, everything. So you want to enter all institutions on your application, even if the coursework completed there was transferred to another institution. That's because you must submit an official transcript from every college attended under the school where the credit was awarded, not the institution it transferred to later. So if you do that and the verifier saw that, we'll get into verification later, they would just send the application back to you. So just one of those things, better to do the first time to not slow down the application process for you. So building off of that in the same section as transcripts, and for each US or English Canadian college attended, you would then click order and select if you're ordering electronic transcripts, that's highly recommended, or you can submit a transcript via mail. So if you do submit a paper transcript, a lot of times that's just going to be if your institution happens to not use one of the electronic services. We would just highly recommend that you download the PharmCAS transcript ID form. It's not required. It helps ensure your official transcripts are properly matched, and it just speeds up the process. Again, request your transcripts early so they arrive by the school deadline. And again, common question, what if a transcript is late? So just so you know, it takes about 7 to 10 business days to process transcripts. So to make sure that your transcript arrives on time based on your school deadline requirements, you want to apply, again, think of that time frame and get those transcripts in early. It's a big reason we say to do the colleges attended section first, because then you can go ahead and get those ordered while you're completing the rest of the application. I do want to note that PharmCAS will accept and process transcripts even after your school deadline, but it's up to each individual school if they're going to still consider your application if the transcripts are late. And again, you can also even submit your application before the transcripts are ever received by PharmCAS. But again, you have to submit all required documents before your application can be considered what we call complete, and the verification process begins. And we'll get more into verification in a little bit. So also in this section is transcript entry. So after you've entered your colleges attended, you can begin this transcript entry process. The key thing to remember here is that no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to enter every course. It sounds daunting, but typically it takes about 1 hour on average, depending on how many schools you've attended. So what you do is you self-report your coursework from all US and English-speaking Canadian colleges, as stated on your official transcripts, and that's going to include even non-grades such as incompletes, withdrawns, and pass-fails, everything. You want to enter each course only once from the transcript where it was originally taken. And again, enter all courses, even if they don't fulfill a prerequisite. So another common question, what happens if you don't enter your courses correctly? So we do have a PharmCAS verification team, and they're going to verify that your self-reported transcript entry coursework matches everything on your official transcript. And the team may return your application back to you for edits during the process. So again, it's best to use a copy of your official transcript when entering your coursework to ensure you've completed the transcript entry as best to your ability and make it an exact replica of your transcript. A little bit later, I'll touch on some common examples of why an application is returned to an applicant for editing. But one just brief example is if you unintentionally omitted a school you attended, they would send it back to you just outlining that you need to add that school and its coursework. So building off of that a little more, these are some special situations that again are commonly asked about. One is labs. So if your transcript lists labs separately, you must list them as separate courses on your application as well. Again, it's pretty much following the transcript. Record the labs exactly as they appear in your transcript. And if your transcript combines them, lab and lecture, into one, you want to list it on your course as one. There's another step where you get to review your transcript. And at that time, you can specify labs or lab with lecture accordingly so that a school knows. You also want to enter college credit granted in high school, such as AP or IB courses. You want to enter study abroad courses as they appear on your US transcript. And again, send official US transcript with those study abroad courses to PharmCAS. And then if you happen to have dual enrollment courses, which are college courses taken during high school, those are considered freshmen and therefore should be listed under the college where you took them in that freshman term. And you do not report these courses again as transfer credits at the undergraduate institution, again, just the first time they appeared. And then lastly here, enter placement exams such as CLEP where college credit was awarded. And as I noted above for labs, once you enter all these courses, there's a button called Review and Finalize My Transcript, and that's where you get to designate specific courses from everything from labs and lab with lecture to study abroad to advanced placement to if the course was repeated. You'll get to identify all of those at that time. And then if you happen to have foreign coursework, just a few quick bullet points on that. You do want to enter the foreign institution and colleges attended, but you do not have to enter foreign courses. You do not have to send foreign transcripts to PharmCAS. But what you would do is if required by the school, you can order a foreign transcript evaluation from WES, and you can do that directly in the PharmCAS application. So moving on here to the PCAT. So first and foremost here, you want to determine whether the PCAT is required or accepted for admission at the institutions that you wish to apply. Note that many institutions have updated their PCAT policies due to the pandemic, so be sure to check the PharmCAS school directory or the Compare Programs pages to see the most up-to-date information. The options of the PCAT school requirements would be one of the ones listed in that blue box here on the left side of the screen. So with this, you must, if you have a PCAT requiring school, you must have your PCAT candidate identification number, which is also known as your PCAT CID. And Pearson, who administers the test, is going to provide you with that CID when you register. So to make sure that your scores are linked to your PharmCAS application, you would need to arrange for Pearson to send your official PCAT scores to PharmCAS. That's done through a school code. It's school code 104. And then once that's set up, Pearson's going to send your most recent set of PCAT scores and test results from up to 4 other previous attempts in the last 5 years. In addition to this, you just want to make sure that you enter your test information within the standardized test section of the application. And that's also where you will enter that PCAT CID number. So similar to what we talked about earlier, this is not a required field for every institution. So PharmCAS is not going to hold your file for missing PCAT scores. You can still submit your application before you take the test, or even if you don't have to take the test, it's just because it is optional. So in this instance, under the standardized test section of the application, if you're planning to take it, but you want to apply first, you can report the date you plan to take the test for your schools to be aware. And then if you do that, you enter that planned or future test date. And then later you can log back into your application that's already been submitted, and you'll just simply add that PCAT CID number, and it would update it accordingly and get those scores sent over to PharmCAS. So last thing I'll note on this page, you can see the pcatweb.info link there. That's Pearson's website, and it's good for all things PCAT, including their testing dates and all that information if helpful. So going back to the application quadrants, let's take a look at a few portions of the supporting information section. So before I move to the next slide, within this quadrant, a lot of the sections are going to be optional. So that's things like experiences, achievements, licenses, and certifications. However, we encourage you not to leave those blank. Schools want to know about your accomplishments, your healthcare experiences, work experiences, extracurriculars, and so on. So don't miss that opportunity to stand out in the crowd and showcase your successes to schools. A big part of this section also is evaluations. So applicants can submit a maximum of 4 letters of evaluations through PharmCAS. And pharmacy schools most commonly request evaluations from a licensed pharmacist, a professor in your major or the sciences, and or a supervisor. So again, visit the PharmCAS school directory to view your program-specific evaluation requirements. It's going to include the number and the type of evaluations required by every program, and note that they do vary. Similar to what we said with PCAT, PharmCAS will not hold your application for missing letters of evaluation. However, your pharmacy school may not review your application until these evaluations are received, if they're even required by the school. So if your evaluations will be late, still arrange for them to be submitted to PharmCAS as soon as possible, and just contact your school for guidance. So all programs are going to receive the same set of evaluations. So you don't want anyone to personalize them. And again, that's going to be up to 4 regardless of the requirements. And once you choose your evaluators, be sure to inform them about the process and that they will be completing the evaluation electronically. We recommend just getting their preferred email address and asking that they monitor their inbox as well as any junk or spam folders for your request. PharmCAS will not notify applicants about missing evaluations, but you can log into your application and go to the check status tab. We'll look at that in a little more detail in a moment. And then you can monitor the status. You can follow up with your evaluators if you see them marked still as just requested or accepted, but not complete. Again, just noting it's your responsibility to ensure they get received and completed on time. And with that being said, just one extra note on this, that if an evaluator is unresponsive or they happen to decline your invitation to submit, you can edit the evaluator's contact information as long as they have not e-submitted it at that time. Once the evaluation is received, it's locked in, but otherwise you can go in, you can remove them, add someone else as needed. So it's also been commonly asked, what do evaluators evaluate you on, and what do they get to see? So they must complete and update a profile section that just has their contact information, just in case a program needs to communicate with them. They must complete a rating section to evaluate you on multiple criteria, and that's just going to be things like integrity or written communication skills, oral communication skills. We list all of the criteria on the website so you can easily see what those are. And then they must upload a letter of recommendation on institutional or organizational letterhead via the evaluator portal. So again, all the questions and every single part of that is on our website or within that instructions PDF. So feel free to go there if you want to see exactly what is required of them. And then we also get asked a lot, what can evaluators see on your end? Can they see your full application? They cannot. They can only see your name, email address, and that the evaluation was submitted on your behalf, but they don't have access to any of your information on the PharmCAS application. So if you need to send them your resume or transcripts, anything that might help them, you would want to do that because they cannot see it. So on this slide, you're going to see the topic of the PharmCAS personal essay. Key thing here, very similar to what we talked about with evaluators, just be original. Your personal statement is an opportunity to tell your story. You don't want to copy content from another source into your personal statement. Just use your own words. The PharmCAS personal statements are submitted for textual similarity through an online plagiarism checker. So just don't want to run into anything that could jeopardize your application with that. If a school does have concerns for potential plagiarism, it's up to the school to decide what action, if any, to take and whether they'll still consider your application. Again, all of that can be found in the applicant code of conduct if you want to learn more about it. But key thing here, just be original and use your own words. All right, back to this. Let's focus a little bit on program materials. And this is where you're going to find instructions for each program that you plan to apply to. So first and foremost here, make sure to leave time for this section. For some institutions, there may be no additional requirements, where for other schools, they might have multiple essays, they might have other requirements for each applicant to complete. It's completely up to them what they can have here. What they might require are in these 4 buckets. First is custom questions. These could be multiple choice, either or, short answer, essay, and so on. Some might have course prerequisite matching, and this is where you would assign courses that you took or plan to take to fulfill the program's required prereqs. They might have document upload. So if applicable, you can upload documents that will only be visible to that particular program. Examples you might see here could be if they want to see shadowing or healthcare hours or unofficial test score reports or something of that nature. And then last is the Cura talent assessments. Again, not applicable to everyone, but some programs may request or require that you complete a Cura talent assessment, and that is separate from the PharmCAS application. And it's a cloud-based online video screening platform where your programs would create virtual interview questions that you would answer virtually in that way, basically recorded. So if you see this, if you have questions, there's going to be more information about it, but contact each program directly if you have questions about that particular one. That's a new feature, but it's starting to pop up a little more, especially with the pandemic and COVID, for another way to do interviews or interview questions and get a feel for applicants. So your application is considered Farmcast Complete, and PharmCAS will begin to process your application once the following materials are received. A completed PharmCAS application, of course, sealed official transcripts from every US and English Canadian college attended, and then the correct PharmCAS application fee payment via credit card processed through the application. So that's PharmCAS Complete, but it's important to remember that that schools may still consider your application incomplete if other items are missing that are specific to them. So that might be PCAT scores or letters of evaluation or supplemental applications or fees. Again, it's all school specific on if they want it by their deadline or if they have wiggle room for after. So best to just communicate accordingly. So after you submit your application, what happens next? Keep in mind that once you submit, you can only make limited changes to your application. So you can add new items to most areas of academic history or the supporting information section or the program materials section, for instance, new test scores, new experiences, new optional documents where applicable, but you cannot edit existing entries. So you can't go in and change any colleges attended that were already verified or courses that were already verified. It's only adding new. Again, we talked about this earlier, but you can also update evaluations with new or in progress statuses and select additional programs to apply to. All other sections are going to be read only. So we've said the word verification a lot, but just to know what that is. So after PharmCAS receives all of your official US transcripts, it's going to conduct its own course-by-course verification process. And verification is going to refer to the matching of the courses on your official transcripts with the courses you entered on that transcript entry section. And PharmCAS is going to check the course information you reported on your application against your official transcripts, and they're going to report any discrepancies to your selected programs if they're notable. That's something like you put in a different grade. They're not going to report that you misspelled something, nothing of that nature. And verification occurs in chronological order and on average takes 2 weeks to complete. That would be the maximum, but usually it's much quicker. PharmCAS will return your application to you for corrections or explanation if it identifies a significant number of course discrepancies or omissions. And your application would then be referred to as what we call undelivered. And when an application is undelivered, you're going to receive a notification detailing the corrections that must be made before PharmCAS can continue processing it. So we talked about this earlier, but a common question we receive is what can cause an application to be undelivered or sent back to you for correction? So let's explore that in a little more detail here. So some examples that cause undelivery are going to be failure to report a college or university you received credit from, or missing or incorrect department prefixes, course numbers, or courses. And usually the missing courses are going to be things like non-credit labs or PE courses, withdrawn courses, test credits, or repeated courses, things that students might see, but they don't put it in there because they repeated it, but everything has to be put in there. Again, if you have one wrong prefix or something like that, most likely it won't be returned to you, but this is when it's typically lots of errors that the verifiers are seeing. And that some examples that do not cause undelivery are going to be misspellings or capitalization errors or incorrect course subjects. They can usually update those accordingly. All right, so GPAs. PharmCAS is going to calculate a standardized set of GPAs to help programs evaluate applicants using uniform criteria. Some of that you're going to see right there on the slide. It's important to note that PharmCAS GPAs may differ from those calculated on your transcripts due to this grade standardization process. Programs may use the PharmCAS GPAs or calculate their own. So for instance, PharmCAS is going to include all grades, all credits in the GPA, including repeated courses. Basically, there's no freshman forgiveness or anything of that nature. But a school can isolate and do their own GPA based on their own institutional standards. It's completely up to them how they're going to look at this. So if you want to learn more about GPA calculations and rules just to see how it is, you can visit the link that's shared on the slide. Again, I can share these later. And if you have questions about your GPA, you can contact PharmCAS customer service to learn more too. So academic update. After you initially submit your application, you might need to go back in there and update your college course history to reflect newly completed or planned or in progress courses. And you can do this during one of these academic update windows. Details for each process of academic update will be forthcoming throughout the cycle once you're in it. So I won't go into too much detail here, but the information is also always documented in the PharmCAS instructions and on the website as well, but these are just the important dates to see those. So we've said this before, but again, applicants are responsible for monitoring the status of their application. Notifications are not sent for missing items. So to help you keep track of your application and materials, if you go in at the top, there's a check status tab. And when you go there, you're going to see all of these different options of the overall statuses. So there's one for transcripts. You can see that one on the screen. You're going to see if it is arrived, or not required if foreign are your options. Under evaluations, you're going to see requested, accepted, completed, or declined. And then there's a standardized test status as well. And if you submit official PCAT or TOEFL scores to PharmCAS, your official test scores would be listed as accepted with the date received as well. So a couple common questions we receive here. How will I know when schools have received my application? So once your application is verified and GPAs have been generated, programs can now choose to evaluate your application, invite you to an interview, or make an admissions decision. Verified is that final status of your application. And then what if something is missing or late? Again, it's your responsibility to ensure all your materials arrive by the school's deadline or the individual deadline requirement, but PharmCAS is not going to determine if you've met that deadline. Again, they're going to keep processing when your transcripts come in, PCAT scores come in accordingly. So just make sure you adhere to the school's information. So briefly touching on interviews here, in current times, you might be conducting your interview in a virtual format or in person. It could vary. Technology used is going to also vary based on the institution and the ability of an applicant to access it. But one thing to keep in mind here is the basic do's and don'ts of before, during, and after the virtual interview are going to remain universal. So while some things seem obvious, we have compiled tips for interviews into a single document for your use. So visit the link on the screen to see this in full. You just see a snippet of it on the screen there. This is again under that helpful resources on the website that we showed earlier. It's just in PDF form there for you. And then after you interview, schools will send an admissions decision directly to you. Depending on the school, they may require a seat deposit or a criminal background check and/or drug screening to be completed. So if you're no longer interested in the school, we just recommend notifying them as soon as possible. And this is just going to really quick recap kind of everything we've just talked about here about the application cycle, just to see it see it graphically, and hopefully that'll piece it all together for you. So at the top here in red is when the application opens in July. And you'll enter everything, you apply, and fall academic update is from December through February, where you'd update any of that planned or in progress coursework. If you are applying to a cooperative admission guidelines school, again, those traffic rules, that March 1 date would come into play right there. The spring academic update is from April to June, where you would again update any of that planned or in progress coursework from that spring semester. And our cycle closes in June. And then in the middle there is the school application deadlines. They can range anywhere from November to June along the way. So last few things here is just to stay connected and learn more. We have social media. We encourage you to follow both PharmCAS and Farm4Me social media. In addition to highlighting key dates and deadlines and content, we also notify followers of any unexpected outages or any other important happenings with the application. So just good to be in the know there. And if interested, join us on September 22nd for a virtual pharmacy school fair where you can learn more about the Doctor of Pharmacy degree programs. The fair is free and it's just going to offer you an opportunity to chat with pharmacy schools nationwide online to learn more about pharmacy education, careers, their individual institutions and requirements, and more. So registration link is on the page. It's free if interested. And lastly here, if there's questions, we'll obviously break for some of them, but if you have questions very specific to the application, we recommend going to Farmcast customer service. They also have a chat feature that's on, if you go to the contact us part of the Farmcast website, you can link to that, to where to get to that. It's within their help center, which is really easy and convenient. And then there's my information as well at AACP should you have any specific questions along the way as well. So with that, I'm gonna get out of presenter mode here and I can stop sharing my screen, put my camera back on, all the steps, and see if you guys have any questions. Sorry if I was rolling fast. I caught wind of the time and I was like, oh. So any questions for me?
I did want to say, so I have a connection with a pharmacy in Knoxville, and I was kind of talking with them. And how important would you say like having pharmacy technician experience is as compared to just like shadowing? Like, would you say there's a difference between them? Because the pharmacy that I have really gotten to know, they're not looking for like hiring positions right now, but they did say that I was welcome to come shadow every now and then. I just didn't know if there'd be a really big difference between those two.
Yeah, so not every school requires shadowing hours, but some do. So there's also a section of that. The PharmCAS school directory literally has everything. So I sound like a broken record if I keep directing people there, but there's a shadowing and observation hour section. And it'll show you if they require any. Most of them, I would say the majority either don't require them or it's recommended but not required. But things like that, whether it does not have to be a job or technician, just keep that in mind. But the shadowing hours, I think it always just boosts an application because they're seeing that you have that experience. So in no way think that, oh, I can't get the technician job, but I can only do this. It's only going to aid it. Yeah, it's a good thing. Any other questions? Well, to both Taylor and Caden, if you guys, the email, the farm4me@aacp.org, that's just me and my team. We're just a team of 4 that we monitor. So if questions come up specific that you think of after, happy to answer those at any time. That's probably better for just like these kind of questions versus the Farmcast customer service. And we're, again, happy to work with you as you gear up for an application process or anything related to pharmacy, really.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm gonna stop the recording.